your background is the archaeologic dig. You're the Tumwater.
Jurassic Park, right?
Well, I have to give Tumwater credit though, because it took Olympia until a month ago to get our backgrounds, and we've been in the pandemic for 2 years.
Oh, and it looked like in Olympia it's summertime. I see sun behind you.
I figured it was sunny this weekend, so I'm like, okay, let's get the good vibes going. Vitamin D.
We like it.
Did you get out this weekend?
Oh, well, so I was supposed to have surgery on the 14th of next week, and I'm diabetic. So I had my blood drawn, and my blood sugar went up to 495. So I have been indoor all weekend trying to get my blood sugar down. So I didn't do nothing.
Lisa, I am going to hit the record button, and then we will be ready to go live. So give it a few minutes.
Got it.
We're good to go.
Oh, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the March 7th Joint Animal Service Commission board meeting. It looks like we have everybody here, but our County Commissioner, Carolyn Mejia, is that right? Is she going to make it tonight? Do we know?
She has not communicated that she would not. So I am assuming that she will be.
Okay, very good. We can go ahead and do some of the preliminary. Oh, yes, go ahead, Shannon.
Chair Parsley, we are a little bit early. We've got
Okay.
1 minute before 5:30.
Lord knows I have been that 1 minute person
Just
before.
1 minute.
Thank you. Shannon, while we're doing that, is it okay with everybody on the board or commission if we use first names? I always want to be respectful.
Yes.
Ed, are you okay with that?
Here.
Shannon? And Sarah, you're okay? Okay. I just want to be respectful. Wow. Long 1 minute. I'll drink some tea.
Now it's 5:30.
Now it's 5:30. Excellent. Do we see her in the waiting room or is she in processing? Okay.
Neither.
Well, we'll start down the with approval of our agenda. We can do that and our consent agenda while we wait for her to arrive. So I'm looking for approval of the March 7th, 2022 Joint Animal Service Commission agenda. Do we have a
Move
motion?
to approve the agenda as posted.
Unmute myself.
Second.
Very good. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. Looks like we have an agenda. Sarah, let's move right on to the approval of the consent agenda for today, which includes meeting minutes and shelter statistics. Any motion?
I will accept to move both of those.
Okay. Do I have a second? Good. Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All righty. Can we move on to public comment? Do we know if we have anyone here for public comment? Sarah.
Let me stop sharing my screen and take a peek real quick. I currently
Hello. Go
I
ahead.
have no one in attendance for public comment, and I have not received any written public comment.
Excellent. Councilmember Mejia, or Commissioner Mejia, we decided it would be okay if we use first names first, if that's okay. And then we have already passed the agenda and the consent agenda. And we were just seeing if anyone was interested in public comment. So we're now going on to the rest of the agenda, which includes agenda item number 7, because we have no action tonight, which is a discussion on revenue and fundraising. Thank you, Sarah.
So moving, hold on. Sorry, guys. Let me try this again. There we go. All right, so we have tonight a discussion for our revenue and fundraising for joint animal services. We thought it would be a good discussion with having some new commission members, as well as a good refresher for the types of revenue joint animal services can receive and the types of fundraising that we can do. So some basic terms, and this is more of a budgetary terms when we start to talk about budget. There are 2 different types of revenue that we account for in the joint animal services budget. The first is what we refer to as direct revenue, and that is adoptions, reclaims, and licensing. And when we refer to direct revenue, we are referring to the fact that jurisdictions receive direct revenue from that. So the number of licenses that are sold in Tumwater will actually go towards reducing Tumwater's assessments. The same with adoptions and reclaims. So it's actually beneficial for the jurisdictions to really push adoptions, reclaims, and licensing, because the more of those revenues that are happening, the more adoptions and reclaims and licensing that is happening by your residents, the greater reduction in your assessment you'll see when it comes to the budget. So Councilmember Agabi, I used you as an example, so thank you for that. Some shared revenue examples are things like private contributions, events, any contracts that we hold, shelter fees. We do receive a part of the adoptions as well, investment interest, and court fees. And so what we mean by shared revenue, this is revenue that is technically brought in by the shelter, but then is distributed per capita across the jurisdictions to, again, reduce your assessments. So you have 2 different ways that the jurisdictions can reduce their overall assessment that they pay to running joint animal services. And that is through direct revenue and shared revenue. And so the shared revenue, the way it gets divided is a per capita basis. So again, that's how we determine your assessments to begin with for each of the jurisdictions. It is per capita, so a population assessment. And these are different types of revenues that come in to joint animal services. And so this is a brief overview, very, high level, simplistic way to kind of look at it. But I wanted to make sure we brought that up so that you guys do recognize when I'm talking about direct or shared revenue, or have questions in those categories, that's what we're referring to. So for fundraising, joint animal services is a 170C1 under the City of Lacey. We are not a 501c3, which is a tax deductible nonprofit. You can make charitable contributions to governmental units under the 501c3 under the IRS code if it's made for public purpose. An entity that is not a political subdivision but that performs an essential government function may not be subjected to federal income tax pursuant of code section 1151. So that's as in-depth as I'm going to get. There is a lot more to this. But what it comes down to is we are allowed to receive donations and allow them to be tax deductible because we are providing a public function for our community. But that does not mean that we have the same freedom as a nonprofit might as far as discretion on how those funds are raised or spent. So with fundraising and donations, these are the 5 main ways that we receive what we would call private contributions. So we get them through in-kind donations. We have an Amazon wish list. We will be the beneficiary of supply drives. So perhaps like Girl Scouts might be doing a supply drive with food and beds and different things like that. And a lot of times people in the community will donate food, litter, you name it, any kind of animal type supplies. We do receive grants from private foundations. And those are considered, since we're a government entity, those are still considered a private contribution because grants in this case would be referring to federal government grants. We do not receive any of those. All of our grants are from the ASPCA, Maddie's Fund, Best Friends Animal Society, and other organizations like that. So individual contributions, we do get people making donations, end of year contributions, bequests. We will have organizations or businesses and other groups be the provider of they will organize fundraisers or events on our behalf. So a good example would be we had a volunteer create a GoFundMe to honor Betty White's birthday at the beginning of the year. And then once that fundraiser was complete, she was the organizer of it and we were the beneficiary of that fundraising event. Another one could be businesses donating a percentage of their proceeds. And I do have an asterisk by this one because this is one that needs to be looked at closely because you have to evaluate the level of work involved with some of these. For example, some of the chain restaurants will have 10% of proceeds go to your whatever nonprofit of choice that week or month. But sometimes there's so many caveats and restrictions, like it's only between the hours of 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. The staff has to do all the work. Every person who's coming to dinner has to bring a flyer or it doesn't count. And so the work that goes into it sometimes is way more involved. And you really have to do a cost analysis as far as what it looks like from a staffing point of view and how much we're spending time on some of these. But again, on the flip side, a really great example, and I'll talk more about it during the director's report, is Top Rung Brewery is doing an adoption event and a fundraiser for us. So 20% of all proceeds, 20% of all proceeds that day go to us at the end of the day. Plus it gets to be an adoption event for our animals as well. And then I kind of threw this in because it's handled slightly differently and it's kind of a hybrid format of a grant / event. So a perfect example that I have up here was our recent Empty the Shelter vet in December, where it's not quite a grant that we're receiving from Bissell. It's paid after the fact and there is some reporting involved, and that goes for both Subaru adoption event as well as the Empty the Shelter event. And so those adoption events are handled a little differently where a donation is made after the fact, but there is also some reporting involved, but you don't necessarily have to write a grant for it. Some kind of no-nos for us as a government entity: we cannot do raffles, we cannot do auctions. It's a fine line with solicitations such as direct mail. And some events even get, when we're the ones hosting it, can be difficult as far as drawing the line. We have to take into consider gifting of public funds and lots of other types of things. So we really do we would prefer other people hosting these events for us. Now, one of the solutions that a lot of municipal shelters have gone to for this, and I'm just bringing this up as part of the discussion, is what we call a Friends of group, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And a Friends of nonprofit group can offer more flexibility since it's not encumbered by the same procurement restrictions that governments must adhere to, such as spending limits and pre-approved vendors. They are able to respond quickly to needs when needs arise and make immediate impact for the shelter. A lot of times these groups are started right before a capital campaign takes place to help with fundraising. And why would a municipal shelter need private donations since it already receives government funding? As a whole, municipalities balance many other needs, from public safety to public health, transportation, libraries, parks, utilities, and administrative services. But sometimes there are additional resources that are necessary when treating neglected, abandoned, abused, and injured pets and keeping them safe in the community. And sometimes those costs go above and beyond what government entities can allocate towards their spending. And so that's where a Friends group can step in and supplement with different funding. I'm going to stop sharing now so we can discuss. Are there any questions?
Is there any questions? Because I have a few, but I don't. Ed, I saw you unmute. Do you want to ask a question?
No, I don't have a question.
Okay. Carolina?
I do. I'm still a little bit confused, Sarah, on the, so it would be a separate group forming the 501c3 saying the Friends of Animal Services, and then how would that work though? Like I'm trying to see with the connection and maybe the transparency of, is it just going to be a fundraising organization where all the funds are just going to go through to animal services? Is there going to be admin needed for that? Like how does that work?
There's a variety of different ways that it can work, and I can follow up with you guys with some examples to look at just to better help understand kind of what I'm talking about. This is a very kind of special. Not all organizations have something like this. What's very common is something like the Friends of the Library, where you have a volunteer organization that does fundraising on behalf of the library. But in cases like this, some of the most popular one is it's usually started by volunteers and things like that who are wanting to make sure that the shelter is getting what they need. It is a registered 501c3. They have board members. They have accountability just like any other nonprofit. But the bonuses to that is they can do all the fundraising that a 501c3 can, that a government entity can't, and then allocate those funds when needed. So some perfect examples, and I'll follow up with an email after the meeting with a couple of links, but Friends of Pima County Animal Care and Control has a really strong and really great Friends group that does a lot of fundraising on their behalf. As well as Dallas Animal Services has a really great Friends of organization as well. And both of those organizations actually started right before the capital campaign so that they could actively fundraise to contribute to a new building when they were doing that. It is up to the discretion. This is not throwing it out saying that we should, but it is talking about when we have a discussion about how we can diversify revenue, how we can bring more donations in. we are limited as a government entity as far as the level of fundraising we can do. I can encourage everybody I speak to about how they can make a donation, how they can hold events for us, and I can encourage that way. But again, we are limited by what we can and can't do. And as we look at what best practices and standards of care are here at the shelter, looking at alternative ways to bring donations and revenue in to help the animals is something that I know the board has expressed in the past, the commission, sorry, not board. This is what happens when I start flipping back and forth between the two. And so it's really about, this discussion was to really bring about kind of what are some things that we do currently, and what are some things that we're open to doing. Again, part of the strategic plan was to be more out in the community and communicate what the needs are of the shelter and present to people what our mission is and what we do in the community. And a lot of that then also goes to talking about what our needs are and how people can help, because people want to actively know how they can help. And sometimes it's volunteering, sometimes it's fostering, and sometimes it's making a donation. But again, we can only fundraise so much. And there's always limitations as far as, our budget and what we are approved for, and going to the jurisdictions when we're asking for increases. So how do we bring more revenue in without that impacting the jurisdictions and their assessments?
I would just add, the society was a major contributor when the shelter was first converted, 20 years ago? I don't even remember how long ago it was. It was a long time. We did make a major financial contribution to that construction project.
Mm-hmm.
The other place that you see 501c3s around town are all of the foundations for the college, for emotion, come on, help me. When you're giving charitable donations for all kinds of work that the colleges are doing. So they exist as well. So those are another opportunities.
I'm not a lawyer, but I do know a little bit about the 501c3. You have to be very deliberate when you set it up, how you're going to spend the money, because you will be bound by that in your incorporation charter. And you have to refile if you change what you're going to donate to. So some of these friends of are kind of broad spectrum, so they are allowed to donate to campaign as well as ongoing expenses or general upkeep. But I do know that much.
Yeah, you have to be very careful where the money goes, how it's delivered. We have been very fortunate in the past, the society, in giving grants to various organizations in the community. We haven't recently, because a lot of because of the COVID situation. We haven't been as good as we have been, but we'll get back there as soon as we start having regular meetings and talking about who needs what.
Peter, you're muted. Sorry.
So in terms of in-kind donation, if I work for Petco and I get Petco to host an event and donate money to the shelter, is that allowable?
It is. With, I will say, with the caveat of like Petco and PetSmart, because they have their own foundations and nonprofits that they work through. So there's PetSmart Charities and the Petco Foundation. usually what ends up happening is there's stuff on our end, which is fine, that we have to fill out, and it ends up going through the foundation or the charity in order to make that happen. Managers usually do have discretion as far as how that works. You know, and I'm speaking from experience being a grant administrator for PetSmart Charities. So, you know, as a manager, you can put forth some of your favorite nonprofits and rescues, and kind of push and make that introduction, and then have that rescue go through, or shelter go through that process. And what is really nice with a lot of the more animal oriented nonprofit groups, whether it's foundations or other granting agencies, they have over the last 10 years have broadened what they'll contribute to, because in the beginning, they were only contributing to other nonprofits, and they slowly realized that municipality animal shelters were being left out of that equation. And so they did have to look at ways of how they can give to those shelters as well, and make monetary donations and impacts through that way. And so there are lots of programs that can go through the Petco and the PetSmart. But yes, like hypothetically, there are, they can also look at, like, a lot of the bigger chain stores like Walmart and Target, they will get damaged pallets, and their managers have discretion to donate those pallets of food to whatever, you know, animal organization that they want to. And so there's different avenues to kind of look at sometimes with some of the different places. We had Petworks, not Petworks, well, yes, Petworks, which is the bark store, sorry. They're all the same person. She is also the lovely person who leases the building of the coffee shop in our parking lot. When COVID first hit, and you know, people were losing their job, having to stay home, she actually made a donation through her pet store, through Petworks, and ordered pallets and pallets of food to be donated to us so that we could hand out at our discretion for people who were struggling. And so there's lots of different avenues to look at when it comes to in-kind, in different ways to go about it.
So would I be right then if I say, because it's allowable, there is no cap on the amount of contribution or money that can be raised and donated to the shelter?
Through in kind, with there is a cap, I believe, with how much your monetary contributions can go towards as a 170C1, because it's a government entity. I do believe that there is a cap as to your percentage of overall contribution.
Okay, thank you.
That's a
In
good
the
question.
Society's case, we give about, I think it's about $3,000 a month of cat and pet food to the shelters, so people can take it for their animals when they go and get things for themselves, for the food banks. Yeah, for the 2 food banks.
Thank you.
That's very good. My question was going to be what you kind of already answered, Sarah, which is it would be great to get a couple examples, especially in the case of capital campaigns, if you know of any. That'd be great. How long ago was this building bought? Just out of curiosity.
This building was purchased and renovated in 1996.
Time flies.
So a little over 30 years at this point.
Okay.
I was still at that time, the president of the Humane Society. Of course, there's been other ones since then, but I was the one that gave the check to JASCOM when they went for that construction. So pretty cool.
Hmm,
That is pretty cool. Full circle here for you, Dick.
good to know.
That's great. Okay. This is good. And always good to get a reminder. I like these snapshots. If there's anything, any other one that the new board or commission members, now you got me doing it, Sarah, would like to review in terms of historical portions of our budget or how we do things, I think that would be a nice little thing to add for the next couple agendas. Like, for example, what are our reserves and what are the policies around them? It's always good to know. Especially since we're living off them to keep our budget balanced. For the next, what, 2 years? Is that right?
Yep, we have 2 years left after this year
Okay.
because we're in the second year of reducing our overall dependency on reserves.
Okay.
It's
So
a 4-year plan.
and I love it. I'm all on board for fiscal responsibility. It's a very good thing. If any of you has something you would like Sarah to cover at one of these meetings that will help broaden your historical knowledge of JASCOM or the animal services here, please just reach out by email and we can get it put in because this is not a bad thing. And those of us who might have heard it, it's always a good reminder because memory is a fickle thing. Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, we're moving on to director's report.
Hold on one sec.
You're doing great, Sarah.
Did not want to start from the beginning, but apparently, hold on. There we go. So a few updates for you. We received an email back from the Bissell Pet Foundation. They loved our thank you letter. And I did include in the director's report packet as well as here what they said, which they were thrilled to get the thank you note, and they absolutely loved our adoption success with Vanellope Potato, and are so thrilled to hear that she is seamlessly fitting in with the family. So they did share that with the entire Bissell Foundation team, as well as Kathy Bissell. The sewer project. So we have the laminated floors in the animal areas is installed. We are currently waiting for the installation of the tile flooring. We could have a little bit more flexibility with the laminate. It didn't necessarily need to match since it was behind the scenes. And so we could have that installed quicker than we can the tile, since that's in a more public facing area. It's a little bit longer of a wait for the tile to get as close of a match as possible. Sorry guys, my clicker isn't working again. There we go. Just a quick note, hybrid meetings. So following the lifting of the state mask mandate on March 12th, JASCOM will be able to meet in person, which means that we will be moving to a hybrid format starting our April 4th meeting. And so you can you can attend via at City of Lacey Council Chambers, or you can still attend via Zoom. So The commission asked for a dive in to the numbers regarding the new field statistics, because during our discussion at the last meeting, we talked about how the numbers are skewed starting now and starting last year because of Pet Point allowing us to separate out these activities more. And so we are no longer tracking our shelter support activities as field calls. So shelter support activities would include vet runs, deliveries, pickups, etc. The only calls that are being reported to the jurisdictions and tracked as actual field calls are going to be our humane law enforcement. So that would include items like our barking complaints, welfare checks, dogs at large, and anything that would apply to an animal control officer going out in regards to codes or enforcement. So again, as a refresher, we're looking at 2020 and 2021's field response. So you can see where there's definitely some significant changes. Olympia, you had the largest change overall as far as field response. And Tumwater, you stayed about the same. So interesting how the numbers go. But field response, comparatively looking at what is actually considered field response and shelter support, this is what we're looking at. So in 2020, before we had transitioned over to Pet Point, overall calls were constituted 1,125 shelter support calls, including 2,380 field response calls, for an overall larger call response, however, not tracked the way they should be and reported. So now that we have Pet Point, we are able to better define what that looks like. And the 133 that you see there is the first 3 months of tracking shelter support before we switched over to Pet Point, and they're no longer tracked as an actual field call. And so comparatively, the numbers are almost the same. It's a little over 100 call difference between the last 2 years during the pandemic. I am fully confident with the way the numbers are already looking that those numbers will be higher this year, both with the county moving to full service as well as the community transitioning out of the pandemic. Strategic plan update. Some of the updates are more around goal 3 this time, which is increased accessibility, inclusivity, and enhanced community involvement. So we have locked down all 4 jurisdictional presentations. Tumwater is tomorrow, and I have City of Lacey on Thursday. And then our other 2 jurisdictions I am presenting to in April. So some events and speaking engagements that we have already just had or will be happening in the future. February 26th, we participated in Northwest Harley-Davidson's Hogs and Dogs event. We had 5 of our dogs adopted. And one of the best stories that came out of it, it's not our happy tales because no one wrote it up for me, but what happened is we had there was 3 puppies that went, and 2 friends ended up adopting one of the puppies each. And so they were already tracking down, like scheduling play dates. And so the moment the 3rd litter mate was adopted, these 2 friends tracked down the adopter of the 3rd puppy and have already scheduled play dates so that all 3 puppies can grow up together. So super cute. March 26th, we are doing an adoption event and a fundraiser at Top Rung Brewery. So we will have hopefully dogs out there looking to be adopted, and 20% of all sales will go towards a contribution to Joint Animal Services. They are going to be starting their social media marketing next week. So keep an eye out for that, and I will send stuff over to you guys, and Joint Animal Services would greatly appreciate any social media pushing that you guys can do on your social media accounts to get as many people there into coming in and having a beer and saying hi to some sweet dogs. March 29th, I have a speaking engagement with Councilmember Kunkel's MLS group. So thank you, Councilmember Kunkel, for coordinating this presentation. I'm really looking forward to it.
MLSA.
Oh, dang it.
That's okay. I'm glad that you were able to coordinate with Chris.
Yes, he was very lovely. So I'm glad we were able to get all that coordinated, and a little bit closer to the date, he's going to email me even a little bit more information. So I'm very excited that our speaking engagements are picking up, and that we can really push our mission and what we're doing for the community. And finally, Happy Tales. We're switching it up from our dogs and cats that I normally show you to Princess Vanellope von Schweetz. And she was this adopter's first guinea pig. She was also so wonderful, they decided to adopt several guinea pigs for the next several years. She lives hanging out in laps and eating her veggies, and Ruppel strutting her way around her cage mates to let them know who's boss. Her personality is as big as her heart, and she loves to have her ears and chin rubbed.
I don't know about you guys, but I love those Happy Tales. It's
The
lovely.
name did it for me this time.
Those are great. Okay, is there anything else for the good of the order on the agenda? Any report outs from any of you? Okay, so let me ask one question, Sarah, about the hybrid meetings. We did that for a very, very short time in the summer of 2021. Is that going to be the same system in the council chambers? Is that correct?
That is correct. It'll be the same setup in council chambers, where we have the U-shaped tables facing the large screen with the smart camera. We'll have the mics turned on in the room to record, and it'll still be the same setup where we are recording our Zoom meeting. And so there is a choice this way that you can attend either in person or via Zoom, depending on your situation. And it also allows for more people to attend as well, if they so choose to attend a public meeting.
I have to say that I went back to Olympia City Council Tech Department and Communications and said that Lacey's system was way better than ours. So if any of you, because I felt like the person who, I forget who was on Zoom, joined us, I felt like they were at the table. It was like one of those little screen heads, but with the tracking of the camera, if any of you feel that it's better for you to do Zoom, by all means, I think you'll find that it's a pretty good system. And there is a little bit of jealousy from Olympia for the system.
Well, definitely kudos to IT and Public Affairs for really getting that set up for the city of Lacey. I have to give kudos to John. He is amazing at getting all that stuff set up and organizing it, and hopefully has promised to help walk me through my first setup of a hybrid Zoom meeting in person as well. So bear with me one more time at our next meeting when we set that up for a possible in-person.
Excellent.
Well, thank you, Chair Parchley and Sarah. I'll make sure that those compliments do get passed on to John Koch.
It's real. I think Kelly was going to strangle me from the city of Olympia when I kept saying, but Lacey did it this way and Lacey's is better. So just to give you guys a good shout out there. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay. Well, you all go and have a lovely evening, and it's dinner time, and we will see you all in a month. Remember to write Sarah if you have any ideas of things that she can do to kind of bring us all up onto the same page in 2022. Okay?
Thank you.